Joe from Joe K Models here. Welcome to my review and analysis of the Albatross Cooper model that I just completed. Just wanted to go over a little bit about what all the build entailed. So let's take a look. First of all, you have the box 1/72 scale from Encore Models by Squadron Products, Albatross Cooper. Pretty decent art for the box here. You got a little bit of a battle going on in the background, very green, but kind of sets the tone for the paint scheme and that type of thing. So on the back of the box we have a description of the pilot here, Marion Cooper. I did a lot of research on him, very interesting guy. I highly recommend that you look him up and take a look at some of the things he did in his life, because he did a lot of things besides fly this airplane. Also in the kit we have photo etch parts right here, as well as the decals. There were also some resin parts as well for the wheels, and also for the exhaust stacks coming out of the engine. So that's what we have with the box. Also with this box, it's one of those where you pull it open and all the parts fall out and everything. So I just cut around the borders here and used a piece of tape and just kind of would open it like this when I wanted to use parts. So I don't really care for this style of box, so that's kind of how I overcome that. So moving on to the directions. One of the things I really like about this is just the extensive history. Everything that you see here talks about the airplane, the man who flew it, and also some side notes about some of the other people involved. So very cool. Also got some performance specs down here, some different these symbols mean in the directions. And we also get a parts list with the parts tree and everything. I actually did not get the sprue W. I got a different sprue with different engines on it, so I had to do some improvising to make that work. I tried emailing Squadron and I didn't get a reply back, so I just kind of had to use what I had there. Also got the photo etch diagram and the resin parts here. And basically what we got with the directions here are a little bit convoluted in my opinion. You end up getting the diagrams of the regular plastic parts and what to do, but then you also get these black and white pictures of where the different PE parts go, and it's not too bad. I was able to figure it out, but there was a lot of jumping back and forth. Let's see if I can find a better example here. Like when I was doing the cockpit, for example, like this right here, you know, it doesn't show very much. It shows, you know, all the plastic parts going together in a fuselage. But to put the actual cockpit together, you know, I was referring to these black and white photos, and they're very dark and kind of hard to see. So, you know, nothing that you can't overcome with a little bit of patience, but I did find it a little bit convoluted. Like down here it talks about doing some of these instrument panels, and you know, that's something that could probably be going on, you know, up here somewhere. So going on to the engine, basically everything that you see here with the engine, I didn't do a lot of it. Like I didn't put this top piece on here, I didn't put this piece on here because I had a different engine and I wasn't going to be showcasing it. So I figure if I'm putting a cover over it, which they did include a cover, why put this stuff on here? Basically all I would need to do was trim what I had to make sure that it fit, and then find a way to make it work, and that's what I did. So basically I used an engine that was close to this. I trimmed it so it would fit. I did have this piece in here for the propeller to go. These parts I ended up putting on at the very end almost, so that I could mask it and build it. So that's what I did with that. Then we get to this part here where there's some vents and other things that go on the side of the plane, and this was all just photo etch. So in order to do that, you had to take your hobby knife and take off the sides of it and then place this on here. It's kind of fiddly. These round pieces weren't that big of a deal, but the vents, you had to fold them on top of one another, so that was a little strange and a little bit confusing. As to how it would go, I think I had them upside down first, or wrong side, and I had to kind of correct it. But in the end, I was pleased with what it came out with, because it is very detailed once you put all of this together. And we get to the cockpit. Very small pieces here. Some of these were a little bit of a pain to do, but it did include photo etch, seat belts, and some other parts, the machine guns. Everything fit pretty well. You basically had 3 walls, or 2 walls and a floor here that you put together, and then you kind of put everything inside of it once that was done. And I thought it was going to be hard to fit everything together, but I followed this diagram very closely, and when I merged the 2 halves together, it fit together pretty well. It was more an issue with these 2 halves being a little bit warped, was more of an issue than actually fitting it together with the cockpit in there. So I got all of this completed, and very detailed cockpit. This is the first time I've really done a biplane World War I era airplane, and it was a lot of fun. I did wood graining, and the technique I used for that was I used a desert yellow, and then I protected it, I sealed it, and then I just took brown oil paint, and I just basically took a brush and dry brushed it until I got a wood grain effect, and then I used a matte coat over it. So that's how I did that. So I got to try that out, and then putting all of this together. Like I said, the 2 halves were a little bit warped, so I had to use a lot of tape. Fitting the engine in here, like I was explaining before, I had to trim it and get it to a place where I could fit it inside of here. It fit okay, and then I was able to put the top piece on top of it, which that didn't fit either. And I had to do some trimming along here. There was a little place where you put the engine in, and it was too far forward, so I used my hobby knife to make it go back further. And you can kind of see that in my video build as well. So once I finally got past all of this, all the machine guns I didn't put in. Basically, I took these 2 pieces off and I just trimmed them very small, and then I just put them in at the very end after I painted. So that I didn't do till the end, and I did it differently. And then we get to the wings, and also with the wings here and these wings here, kind of flimsy. You got to be careful. It's not one piece, it's 2 separate pieces, so you got to make sure they're glued very well, and you allow enough time for the glue to set. Otherwise, I could easily see this snapping off, or if you're not careful, you know, that type of thing happening. So very careful with that. And this wasn't too bad. I did have to, they had some extra top flaps here, so I had to trim these down, take the ones off of the kit and then put these on there. I'm not sure how noticeable or different they were from the original molding, but I did do that. And then you had some PE parts that went on the top vents, and underneath it there were also some vents that got put on. And I didn't do this assembly here until after I painted. I did all of the painting first, and I kept the top wing separate, and you know, I just basically did all of this, the bottom fuselage as well as the bottom wings, and then that separately. And I had the cover on as well, and I had the engine mast. And what I did for the painting is, once I got everything together, is I took Mr. Surfacer 1500 and I basically painted over the whole airplane. And what that did was, well, what I was trying to do was give it a wood effect to where it looked like there was, you know, dull wood underneath. So I used that, and that also filled any seams and holes, because everything fit together pretty good, but there were definitely some seams that needed to be filled. And you know, looking back at it, I actually really liked using Mr. Surfacer to achieve this, because I think it came out pretty well. So that's what I did with that. The painting part of it, I basically did a pre-shading underneath the wings, and then once I was done with that, I used this color here, aged white, for the underside of the wings, as well as camo green, both from Vallejo. And I went to a hobby shop and you know, took this diagram with me and just tried to find the colors that most matched, and I'm pretty sure this was a pretty good selection. You'll see the finished model after this, and you can be the judge yourself. And then I painted that. I painted the underside of the wings first. I went light to dark, and then after I was done with this, I sealed it with a TS Clear from Tamiya, and that's because I wanted to mask this and then paint the green, and I was doing it with an airbrush. So if you're going to be using any type of tape to mask, I recommend that you do use that clear coat over it and allow enough time to settle. That way when you're peeling tape off, I've had it happen to me where I'll peel it off and it'll take some of the paint off. And I use the TS Clear, I'm not sure of the number, but it's the clear from Tamiya, and that worked out great. And then I also use the floor cleaner from Pledge on other parts, and it worked out great. And I was using some pretty heavy duty tape, and you know, it worked out really well. And even though there were decals over the top of the wings, I still painted everything green. That way if there was anything showing, it would be seamless. So that's what I did with that. After sealing everything with the colors, I then went to the decaling, and the decals were, you know, honestly, I was a little bit skeptical of it when I saw it, but once I did it, the decals were very good. They were very thin. I feel like they gave me extra on the actual like top of the wings, like maybe a little bit more than I needed, and that was cool because it didn't have to be perfect. I could, if there was a little bit hanging over, I could trim it after I had, you know, put the what's it called, the stuff you put over the decals once you have it on, the solution. Once I had that on there, I was able to just kind of peel the edges right off of it, and it came out to a really good finish. So hats off, and everything fit really well. I did cut this top decal in half instead of just doing one whole piece, and it actually suggests doing that, and that worked out really well. You have these white squares where the Polish insignia goes, and then you put those on separately. But all in all, not many decals, and they went on very well. Very good, very interesting pattern. Kind of looks like like drapery from the 70s or something. I'm not sure, but very cool nonetheless. I also, I guess before that, I painted the nose red, and I used Tamiya tape for curves to do this. Worked out very well. One of the things though that I did that I ended up going back over was I painted the whole plane green, and then I did the red color. And what the dark green did to the red was it basically made it warmer than the actual color, and it came out almost like maybe a little bit of a maroon color. So after I got done painting it, I went back over it with white, and then I painted red over the white, so that way I would get a more true color. And I'm a lot happier with how it turned out, because I mean, this color should really match or be close to the color here on the Polish insignia. So after doing that, I thought it worked out really well. Okay, so moving on to, you know, after the decals were put on, after everything was painted, it was then time to move on to putting the top of the wing on, as well as the, you know, the stabilizers, struts, whatever they're called. And as far as putting this on top, everything fit together really well. I glued these two pieces onto the top of the wing, and then I put them on. Well, I put all of the struts on the top wing, and then I put them on. So these two on the side of the wing fit really well. The two in the middle were not touching. So basically, once the wing was in place and pretty much in the correct position, I had to apply pressure on the top and basically leave it overnight with the wings having pressure on top so that they would have these touching the side of the airplane. And I used super glue, but I tried doing it a few times, and I actually had to use the top of a candle right here, and I just put this on the top of the wings and let it sit overnight. And I was afraid it wasn't gonna hold, but it ended up holding. I was also afraid that it was gonna collapse the wing, but luckily that didn't happen. I had 2 or 3 different attempts where it didn't work before that, so finally I was just like, okay, I'm gonna put the glue on, put this on top, and just let it sit all night. And if that doesn't work, I don't know, we'll have to throw some other kind of Hail Mary, but it worked out good. So got all that taken care of. All of these I basically had as sub-assemblies. Wheels I did pretty much black. I did this as a wood grain color. This part was actually put on when the fuselage was put on, also painted as a wood. It didn't have a tail wheel, it just had this piece of wood sticking out. These were all put on after I had weathered the airplane. And to weather the airplane, all I did was I took an old paintbrush that was pretty stiff. It was this one right here. And I just took some brown oil paint, maybe some black, and I just basically tried to make some different like mud splotches on the bottom of the airplane. So that's what I did for that. Then I put the wheels on. There were PE parts for the window, or I'm not the window, but the wheel, as well as separate resin parts right here. But these proved to be pretty much a nightmare to put on. These were so delicate coming off that luckily the kit included some wheels. See 5 right there. So I just used those, and you know, I'm happy with the way it turned out. And you can see like you have a shaper here, and by the time you get all of this together and it didn't fit right, it was, I don't know how they got this picture down here. Obviously somebody with some pretty good skills, but you know, I just used what was on there in plastic. And yeah, so I put all that on there, and then everything was weathered. And the well, second to last thing was the rigging. And the rigging is something that I was, you know, both a little trepidatious about and also looking forward to, because it's not really something that I've really have a lot of experience doing. I've been using stretch sprue for my airplanes, and basically it's just been pretty much one line running from the midsection of the airplane to the tail, and I've been able to use stretch sprue for that. But you know, I had some easy line that I used, and what I did with this was I just worked from the inside to the outside, and you cut a piece of easy line. So for this, for example, there's 4 different lines sticking out. I'd put a little tiny blob of super glue there, and I did 4 strings all at once, and I made sure they were all there, and I let them set, and then I pulled them, and then I cut them so that they were a little bit shorter from the contact points. And then I just used scissors to cut those, and in order to glue them into place, I put another little blotch of super glue where it went, and then I used an accelerator, which this is the product that I used here, Instaset, and I just sprayed some on the top here, and I just put the easy line, the tip of it on here, and then you touch it, and then it just, within 2 or 3 seconds, it, you know, it just tightens, and you can let go, and it's good to go. And it's a lot easier than using stretch sprue, as well as incense candles and that type of thing. So pretty happy with the way it turned out. It was a little, you know, some growing pains at first, but I started to get the hang of it. I even did the back of the plane here, and this was very fiddly to get that to go. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out, you know, being my really first attempt at it. And then we just put the wood grain propeller on it, and that completes the build. So there we go. So let's take a look at the actual airplane here. And this is what we got. So you can see the weathering on the bottom of the airplane here. I did that. There's the wood grain on the wheels. And you can see all of that easy line work that I did. And if you watched my video build, this is something that I caught right before I did the video, was I was so excited that I got all of the easy line done here is I forgot the ones to the nose, and I was getting everything together and I was looking at the instructions and I realized that I had forgotten to do those. So if you watch my video and you watch the last part of it, you'll notice that those aren't on there, but they're on there now. So if anybody calls me out, I can tell them to watch another video of mine, I guess, and they can see the full thing. So um, here's how that wood grain turned out on the propeller. Really like the technique. I think it does a very good job of making it look like real wood. And here's the exhaust pipes. It's not 100% perfect, but I did the best that I could since I didn't have the correct engine, and just kind of putting them in there and using my eye to try and space them out. I think I did an admirable job, but I'll admit it's not perfect. Just oil, black and brown mix to do the weathering. You can kind of see that there. And I'm starting to become a bigger fan of using oils to do weathering than just regular enamels. I think it gives like a better effect. There's your Polish, I think it's 808th Squadron. I did a Spitfire that had the same one on it. And you can see the pattern there. And I don't know if I'll be able to get a good view, but there's a lot of detail in the cockpit. You can kind of see the seat belts in there and everything. There's a lot of detail in there, and it's amazing on these World War I, even though it technically isn't World War I, it's very close to it. All the detail that goes into the cockpits, and you don't really get to see a whole lot of it, but I mean, I know it's there. So you know, I enjoyed this build a lot. I feel like this is something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and I'm happy that I did it. I didn't get to it as fast as I wanted to. I've been busy with some other things, and to be honest with you, there were a couple firsts for me, so maybe I was a little bit slow to get to it because of that too, but really happy I did it. I wouldn't recommend this to a beginner, but you know, maybe an intermediate modeler would have a go at this and have a good time at it. This is also something that could be hand painted, because there's, you know, it's not very you know, it's not like a camouflage pattern or anything. You know, I think you could have got away with, I could have gotten away with painting this by hand if I wanted to. So a lot of detail, and just very, very cool model to add to the collection. So I'd like to thank you for checking this video out. And if you checked out my video, I appreciate that too. I'll leave a link to it if you wish to check it out. And thank you so much for the support, subscribing, liking my videos, comments. I really appreciate the feedback. And keep modeling and have a great day.